welcome to A Gentleman's Review. I'm your host, Art Hampton. And so, a lot's been taking place in the news lately. You have the J.D. Vance pick, and then all this Biden craziness, then Kamala Harris running around, and the little shooting in Butler, PA. But I wanted to finish the J.D. Vance conversation simply because the mainstream propaganda is leading people away from the conversation by the nose. And we kind of forgot about J.D. Vance. So I don't think he's gotten the scrutiny that he deserves. Now, certain people would have you think that he is not a neocon. I mean, John Bolton supposedly had a panic attack, and Bill Kristol was upset as well. And Vance doesn't want us intervening in Europe, wasting resources into Ukraine, but he does want us to direct our resources to Asia and send weapons to Taiwan. Now, my mom is from Taiwan, and so I am indeed sympathetic to them. However, Congress hasn't declared war yet. And I mean, we haven't declared war since World War II. And so sending them arms and armament should be out of the question, especially redistribution of wealth through foreign aid. So on the topic of neoconservatism, for those that don't know that term, it was started by William F. Buckley, who was a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. Now, to be a member, you have to agree with their agenda to establish a one world totalitarian government. John Bolton, who was a part of Trump's cabinet, well, at least until Trump fired him, is a member of the CFR as well. Irving Kristol, who was considered the godfather of neoconservatism, stated in his book, Neoconservatism, "We accepted the New Deal in principle and had little affection for the kind of isolationism that then permeated American conservatism." So you have two aspects to neocons or neoconservatism. One, redistribution of wealth, which is basically communism, and two, continuous war. To understand neoconservatism and how William F. Buckley started the movement, I would recommend William F. Buckley, The Pied Piper for the Establishment by John McManus. J.D. Vance said the United States doesn't need to get involved in all the conflicts overseas. So the neocons like John Bolton and Lindsey Graham get upset at this label and call him an isolationist. However, it's not a matter of being an isolationist. He is not an isolationist by any stretch of the means. It's just a matter of where to go to war. And they're arguing over that. Kind of like when Trotsky was arguing with Stalin over where to redistribute the wealth. Trotsky wanted to send it to other nations. Stalin wanted to keep it within the Soviet Union. And so they fought and ultimately ended up in Trotsky fleeing to Mexico, where Stalin's people caught up to him and executed him. So, fundamentally, Vance has opposed foreign aid in Europe and in the Ukraine, not because he's an isolationist, but because he is a realist. This philosophical difference is very concerning. Vance realizes the U.S. can't get involved in all the conflicts overseas, but he does want to get involved in some, mainly in Asia. The other problem with foreign aid on the philosophical level is that it is indeed redistribution of wealth, as I said earlier. Now, most people, when they think of redistribution of wealth, they think of taking from the rich and giving to the poor. However, there are many forms of it, and this particular form of redistribution of wealth through foreign aid is the difference, like I said, between Trotsky and Stalin. But, but the differences between Trotsky and Stalin were marginal. They simply agreed on where to redistribute the wealth. It's kind of like the infighting that happens in the U.S. all the time. The Democrats want the money to flow this way, and the Republicans want it to flow another way, and neither side would dare suggest to stop the redistribution of wealth and give it back to the taxpayer who actually earned it. But I digress. Back to J.D. Vance. He's not a foreign policy expert. It seems like he's just a neocon that doesn't want to go to war with everybody. But he, like I said, he still wants us to go to war in Asia. But This reminds me of an interview that Tucker Carlson had with Thomas Massey. As a side note, Tucker has had some really good interviews after he got away from the mainstream propaganda that is indeed Fox News. But Massey talked about how things work in D.C. and one of the many ways they manipulate the men in office in D.C. The neocons are supposed to be the experts on foreign policy, and when you get to D.C., you get a neocon handler. Hey, John Doe is a great guy. He's been around a long time. He's a wealth of knowledge who can do all the heavy lifting for you so you can go raise money for your campaign and free you up to go to fancy dinners, to eat sushi and caviar. And most legislators jump on that. I guess they really like caviar. But J.D. Vance has his flaws, and he seems to be, I don't know, quite either ignorant or just plain out a neocon. And if you're ignorant in D.C., they prey on you. But Thomas Massey explaining how D.C. works is probably the best congressman since Ron Paul, and Massey's the only one who seems to be withstanding the onslaught of neocons and the mainstream propaganda. You know, Israel has a really good lobbyist team in D.C. when they're able to orchestrate Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, to parade himself in front of Congress to beg for more money to be redistributed to them. And Massey walked out saying, "I will not be a part of this political theater." I kind of wish Trump picked him as a VP, Thomas Massey, but I digress. In 2016, the neocons came out against Trump, labeling him an isolationist, and Trump's first term, in those respects, were very calm in respect to foreign policy, especially in comparison to Obama and Bush. Due to the weakness of Vance on the issue and the foreign policy and influence of the neocons, if Trump gets a second term, it may not be as peaceful as the first. Now, the other aspect of J.D. Vance is that he is a Bilderberg attendee. Now, Bilderberg is a globalist organization founded by former Nazi SS member Prince Bernhard in 1954. They hold annual meetings in the Netherlands at the Hotel de Bilderberg. They are technically a secret society, or, semi-secret society. I guess you're not technically a secret society if you have a website. But this organization has between 120 and 150 of the world's most powerful people. And I mean, you got some useful idiots that come along as well, but you have 150 of the world's most powerful people coming together to plot your future on your dime. Publicly, Bilderberg orchestrators minimize what actually takes place there by publicly stating it is, quote, a forum of informal discussions designed to foster dialogue, end quote. Now, some other claims posted on their website is, quote, there is no desired outcome, no minutes are taken, and no report is written, end quote. However, there are several attendees that have suggested and even openly admitted in public statements that much more than just private talk is taking place at their annual summit. On their website, they now openly entail the talking points and issues they will address at the summit. Now, if that isn't true, we really don't know what goes on, but the leaders from big government establishment, leaders, mainstream propaganda, media, such as publishers and editors and all the three-letter spy organizations attend, like the NSA and the CIA and the European counterparts, are always well represented there. Also, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers with the war machine neocons, with the heads of all the tech companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook also attend. Now, it may not look like these attendees have much in common, except they are in power, but they do all have one thing in common. They are globalists who have bought into the one world government. Now, Dennis Henley, a Bilderberg member or attendee, told the UK Guardian, "Those of us in Bilderberg felt we couldn't go on forever fighting one another for nothing and killing people and rendering millions homeless, so we felt a single community throughout the world would be a good thing." End quote. He means a single community, a single government in a totalitarian state or communist state. You mindless commoners, you're just going to go around killing each other, but we at Bilderberg will establish a one-world utopian community. In an interview with G. Edward Griffin, Norman Dodd said, after speaking with the head of the Ford Foundation, they want to so alter life in Western society that it can be easily, quote, merged with the Soviet Union, end quote. So you get the idea. Even communist leaders from China and Russia have been invited in recent years. Bilderberg also pulls the strings from behind the curtain in installing legislators in charge of asserting their schemes on the people. In 1991, the governor of Arkansas was invited to Bilderberg, who shortly after became the president of the United States. His name, Bill Clinton. Obama went to Bilderberg and shortly after became president. For several years, Bilderberg attendees have been the core of the president's cabinet. Their influence isn't contained in the U.S. Tony Blair attended Bilderberg and later quickly became the prime minister. As a matter of fact, the last few prime ministers of the U.K. attended Bilderberg just before being appointed prime minister. Some notable attendees to Bilderberg are Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the UK until he was forced to step down after BRICS exit, Colin Powell, Michael Hayden, former head of the CIA and NSA who bragged in public that they kill people. And see if you can find that video. They kill people based on their metadata. John Edwards, Henry Kissinger, Prince Philip, Prince Charles, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Condoleezza Rice, and retired General David Petraeus. Petraeus, former director of the CIA. And it's interesting because I met the retired colonel who introduced Petraeus to Paula Broadwell, for those of you older that remember that story. And when I met this colonel, I said, "Please, sir, don't introduce me to any women." And this is not a theory. You can find the official list of attendees on their website. Like I said, semi-secret society. Just go to bilderbergmeetings.org to see their attendees. Yes, even President Trump had Bilderberg attendees in his cabinet. James Mattis, Secretary of Defense, Rick Perry, Secretary of Energy, Wilbur Ross, Secretary of Commerce, and now J.D. Vance. Now, I believe that Trump could very well have been neutralized by the globalist pick in the number 2 position. He was either conned into that choice or coerced. Now, Trump can't know everybody, so he relies on his staff to make these decisions for him. And so it sounds like he needs to get rid of some staff. But much like he didn't want the globalist choice of friend of China, Benedict Pence, in Vance, we believe we have the other side of the uniparty. A once never Trumper. Interestingly enough, Trump's pick for vice president was a never Trumper. Interesting. Reconstructed as a patriot conservative. It sounds like the other side of the Obama narrative. Now, Vance was recruited while a student at Yale, a known CIA recruitment venue, squired by Bilderberg globalist elite Peter Thiel. He entered the world of Silicon Valley venture capitalism. hobnobbing with the likes of Jeff Bezos, Eric Schmidt, also a Bilderberger. Interestingly, that Thales' company, Palantir, works with the U.S. government to conduct domestic surveillance. That's interesting. How convenient for the deep state to usher in the Great Reset. Of course, outwardly, Vance opposes all of this, although he seems to be positioned to retain it. Now, there's a rags to riches stories going from a broken home, poverty, to big money. Now, does that sound familiar? Thale's the one who took Vance to Mar-a-Lago to broker the deal, possibly after relieving him of his TDS. Vance worked at Sydney, Australia, a law firm that employed the Obamas and other such operators. A cursory review reveals that a core part of their business is with Silicon Valley venture capital. Also a partner who was the general counsel of Odeon and HBHO, who represented Hawaii, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce. Vance's wife was on the board of directors at the Gates Cambridge, a Gates enterprise. JD has said, and I quote, "The sad fact is that I couldn't do without Ursa. Even at my best, I'm a delayed explosion. I can be diffused only with the skill and precision. And it's not just that I've learned to control myself, but that Ursa has learned how to manage me," end quote. Yet another Yale graduate, Vivek, whose education was funded by, George Soros, is Ursa's first cousin. Oh my goodness, they're all connected. That's not a surprise. Note that in the recent past, Vance called for a global carbon tax program, a tax on your personal carbon footprint. Now, this is the system for the carbon trading platform, likely tied to digital IDs. It is evidence of yet another convenient position change. TDS to MAGA on the green agenda. In 2020, he spoke at OSU about society's climate change problem and said that using natural gas as a power source isn't exactly the sort of thing that's going to take us to clean energy future. According to Open Secrets, Vance received $283,000 from the oil and gas industry for his 2022 campaign. In the years since, he has stated that he doesn't think there is a climate crisis and questioned the human contribution to global warming. I'm concerned that conservatives have their heads in the sand. We are at a very dangerous point in history, and Trump is probably not the deus ex machina that everyone thinks will come in and save the day as much as we wish for that outcome. I mean, last time he said he was going to get us out of the UN, arrest Hillary and all this stuff, and that never happened. But anyway, that really has been sabotaged. Now, what could be a more likely scenario is that the globalists allow Trump to win so that people will imagine we are saved and go back to sleep. Then they'll strike the final blow. See, that's the problem with conservatives is we want to just play defense. It's time that we play the offense and go on the offense, because you can't win a war just playing defense. But alternately, they could get behind a heels up, cackling idiot, Harris, and prop her up as the next puppet. I don't know. We'll have to just watch and see. But thank you for listening to the Gentleman's Review, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.